There's very little correlation between how much money you have and the level of happiness past the basic subsistence level. The element that there's the highest correlation with is an element of community, who you're with. So it's this meaningful work. Are you on a mission? And meaningful relationships through a life arc that evolves. So that's my definition of success is more like evolving well and contributing to evolution.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for committing to your growth, to your self-development, taking out the valuable time of your lives to use it to become better, to grow, and to learn. You could be doing anything in the world right now, whether you're walking your dog, whether you're commuting, or whether you're at work and trying to learn more. Thank you for making this commitment to wisdom and to knowledge. And you know that my commitment to you on this podcast is to introduce you to the people, the ideas, the messages that can transform your work, life, and love. And today's guest is going to do just that. I'm so excited personally. This has been someone that I've been wanting to bring to you on the podcast for a long time, so I'm going to have to contain my excitement as well. But he's an American billionaire investor, hedge fund manager, and philanthropist, and the author of this incredible book called Principles. Now, I read this book when it first came out, and there were so many incredible insights of wisdom in there. And today I get to sit down with the one and only Ray Dalio. Ray, thank you so much for being here.
Whoa, like I don't deserve all that, but back at you. Thank you.
No, you're very kind. You're very kind. And I'm so grateful to have this opportunity with you because I truly believe that I'm so grateful. You said on the phone when we were speaking that there are these different stages of life. And I'm so grateful that you're at the stage of your life where you are sharing everything you've learned with all of us, because I think there's such a wealth of knowledge that we all have to gain from. So thank you from me and everyone else who's listening and watching for taking this next stage in your life.
Well, it's a treat and a responsibility, so I'm happy to do it. Thank you for helping me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So today I want to dive into life and work and many different areas that you speak about in your incredible book, Principles. And the first thing I want to dive into is these stages of life you speak about. Because when you said that to me on the phone the other day, they really resonated. Why don't you guide the audience through those different stages and phases and how you see them changing our life?
Well, I think to simplify, there are 3 stages in your life. The first stage in your life is when you're learning and you're dependent on others. Go to school, come out, graduate from school. It's very different from the second phase of your life where you're working, others are dependent on you, and you're trying to be successful. And that's what larger your audience is in that early stages.
Absolutely.
So I'm so excited to speak to them. And that whole arc is totally different. Like on the first arc, first part of the life, you pretty much follow a track. What schools, parents taking care of you, whatever it is, and then what decisions do you make? You hardly make any decisions. You make, okay, what college do you go to if you go to college? Then you go to the college and what major do you have? And then you come out to this world, the second stage, in which really the whole thing is wide open to you, particularly if you don't stay on a track. And you realize that there's no instruction manual and you can go anywhere and you could do anything. And then it's a very different phase. It's a more difficult phase. And that second phase then has an arc to it. And then somewhere in the vicinity of your last phase, that's the phase where you're free to live and free to die. And your preferences change. You change. Your relationships with others change. So that's the life arc that I'm referring to. And so I'm in the transition from the end of my second phase to the beginning of my third phase. And at that phase, I just want to pass along what I've learned to help people who are early in their second phase.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right that is the majority of people that are listening and watching right now. And for me, you brought something up really interesting there. One of the biggest things is we become paralyzed by choice and decisions. Because so much of that early phase is where things were decided for us, where choices were made for us. And I often feel we bring that mindset to the second phase where we're still looking for someone else to help tell us what to do and what decision to make and what's the right thing to do. How have you seen through your experiences, how have you dealt with choice and decision as that phase of life changes?
Well, I think, first of all, one has to know their nature. You might have to discover it. But your nature means, do you have a sense of adventure? Do you seek security? Are you an extrovert, an introvert? Those types of things. So personal discovery is important. I think that who you're with and where you are is more important than what you do. Because in the early phase of that second phase, it's total discovery. So it's experimentation. You went to India for 3 years, right?
Yes.
And that, but if you have that sense of adventure, to let go, you can discover. That's your opportunity. But discover yourself as well as to discover what the choices are like. And then as you move later into that, you'll feel the pulls. And to feel never trapped. We were talking just before we began that so many people say, I can't be that way because my job won't allow it, which is a silly concept because you have the freedom of those choices, even when you have constraining situations. So I think that's the life arc. Enjoy this wide open choice. You can be anywhere in the world. You can do almost anything. Let go, experiment, and then move on.
Absolutely. And did you feel that same freedom when you started as well? Or do you feel it's changed now? Do you think there's more access?
In my case, when I was 12, I got hooked on trading markets. So I loved that game. So I discovered it early. And then I wanted to, but I had this sense of adventure. I discovered when I went to work at a company that working at a company was not my thing. I got fired. I punched my boss. And I really then learned the freedom. I didn't have any idea that I was setting up a company. I just sort of said, I can do these things. Probably like you. You discovered, okay, I could do those things. And then one thing leads to another. And then, you build. And I always like the variety. So my nature is macro. So I like going all over the world, all different cultures, understanding how the world works. And so I found something that clicked through that experimentation.
Yeah,
but then there's ups and downs, right? Lots of ups and downs. So we need to talk about failure. How great failure is.
Yeah, let's do that, because I think when I'm hearing you say that, it's so refreshing. Because when I hear you saying, yeah, I had to figure it out and I was experimenting and testing and I didn't even know what I was building, I love hearing that, because that's what my experience so far has been too, as opposed to like a very rigid, strategic, not that there isn't strategy, of course there is, but something very rigid and planned. There is a lot of experimentation in that growth where failure is natural.
Yeah. My son in 2014 gave me a book, Joseph Campbell, and it was called Hero of a Thousand Faces, and it refers to the hero's journey. And this is like at the end of my experience, and I found that that's very, very true. And so there's this cycle. So a certain type of personality wants a taste for adventure. You go out and have the adventure. And then there are the ups and downs, and then you crash. You will have a failure. If you're adventurous and you're pushing the limits, you will have a failure. And that failure can be a transformative experience. I have an expression that pain plus reflection equals progress. So they call it the abyss. And change, the learning of humility, to maintain your aggressiveness, your audacity, and to simultaneously learn humility. And that happened to me. I was, you described it. I graduated from school. 2 years, I worked on Wall Street for 2 years. I got fired from my job. And 2 years later, I'm running my little company. Something like 7, 8 years after that, I made terrible mistakes in the markets. I crashed and I lost everything. And I was so broke that I had to borrow $4,000 from my dad to help pay for my family expenses. And it was publicly because I was on Wall Street Week and I made all those mistakes. And that was one of the most painful. Pain can be great because it changed my whole perspective to decision making. As I'm saying, it gave me the humility I needed to operate with my audacity. In other words, to simultaneously be bold and aggressive, and also to know that I could be careful. I learned that if you're doing risky things, anybody who does risky things, tightrope walk across buildings or whatever, it's that they also know how to deal with the risks well. So how to be bold and then to learn from the failures. And it changed my whole approach to failure. I began to think of failures like puzzles, that if I could solve the puzzle, I'd get a gem. And the puzzle was, what would I do differently in the future? And the gem I would get would be a principle of how I would deal with the future differently. So understanding that if you press the limits, you're going to fail, and it's okay. And life is a long journey. Failure has a tone to it that it sounds like it's an end. No, it's part of that process of learning and then making that great advance. But the humility combined with the audacity was helpful, because then I would go to try to find the smartest people I could find who disagreed with me, that independent thinking. And I would also know how to deal with my risks better. So I kept my upside without losing my downside. So that's failure and pain. If you look at the second order effects, if you make the most of them, they're the most valuable.
Absolutely. And I love that balance that you've just spoke about, or that bringing of the two together of humility and audacity. I've never heard it like that before. And I really value that, because I can see why humility is so powerful, but not that humility stops you from having that boldness and that courage. And almost like, how have you maintained that? Because I'm guessing that being at rock bottom, like having to borrow $4,000, can be very painful. And then when you're experimenting again and going on your next adventure, you've got to be okay with the fact that that could happen again? Or was that humility holding that back, having that happen again?
I think the tightrope walker crossing the building is the example, right?
Yes.
You fall, and you fall hard. Now, some people won't get on the tightrope again.
Yeah.
Some people will get on the tightrope again.
Yes.
And then they think, how do I do that? So how do I be bold and aggressive? And I pull it off. And it's the same way, right? You start to think, well, maybe I do this or that differently, and I practice more. It's that combination of the caution and practice that allows you to take it to the limits that you never would have been able to take it to before, right? I learned that. Once I learned that, everything changed. Wow. Because I also would know how to take the hits. In other words, I don't mind getting banged, but I don't want to get knocked out of the game.
Yes.
So the willingness to get banged but not knocked out of the game is a big part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, like a good fighter, right? Like you just giving that analogy for me. It's like sometimes a boxer or a fighter needs to know which punches to take in order to be able to drop a bigger punch. That's part of the game. And that's what you were saying about solving a puzzle. I love that analogy, because I think if we see everything as puzzles, that there's a way of figuring it out, right? You know there's an answer to a puzzle.
Yes, I think the key is to think of reality as you're given. Reality is reality. And think of it as working like a machine. There are cause-effect relationships that make the realities around you. Okay, now, if you go above yourself and you look at that, how does that machine work? And then how do I interact with that machine to get what I want? And you do that with an equanimity. Meditation also helped me a lot.
Yes.
I learned to meditate many years ago. If you have equanimity and you look at it above and you look at it with curiosity and you say, oh, I must not be interacting well with my reality, and how do I change it and how does it work? It's a very powerful way of approaching life.
Absolutely. And that definition of equanimity too, equanimity means to deal with good and bad.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to know, how have you celebrated and embraced successes in your life too? We just spoke about failure. I'm intrigued to know how someone like yourself deals with success.
Well, I think my thinking about success has evolved over a period of time. I thought about success. I today think about success differently. It's like the way I thought about it originally when you have this failure. I thought that it's like there's a jungle out there. I want to have the greatest life possible, but in order to be successful, I have to cross this dangerous jungle. Now, I could stay on the one side of the jungle and have a boring, safe life, but unless I deal with the risks and return go together, and it's like going into this jungle. So what would I choose? Would I choose to go into the jungle and cross the jungle and have the greatest life possible, but I might get bad things might happen? And then I started to think when I went into that jungle, of course I had to cross the jungle, but I started to realize how to cross the jungle, most importantly, with people who could see things differently than I could on the mission with me. And so, and we would protect each other in that jungle. And that's what it was like. So life is a lot like that. Who are you in the jungle with? And they might see things differently from you. And then you protect each other and you go through. And the thing that I discovered was that as I had these successes and failures, and much more successes than failures, I began to realize that I didn't care as much about the success as I cared about the journey. Okay. In other words, I didn't want to get out of the jungle. I didn't want to get to the other side, because it might be like, I don't know, climbing mountains or doing whatever you realize. There's a new peak and there's a new level of success, and it won't keep you happy. Okay. You don't sit there. You want to go on.
Yes.
And it is the ups and downs of that journey and the striving into becoming better that becomes the new definition of success. And so I started to see my life in this life arc way, with my preferences changing, because your preferences naturally change as one has kids and as they start to think. I mean, everybody that you're dealing with is going through a life arc. If you think about who are the people you love, what is your relationship with your parents? What are your relationship? Do you have children? They will have a life arc. And as you go through that life arc and you see those things changing, then you start to realize that operating consistent with that life arc and on that journey to evolve well, is what success is. It's not the money. It's like money loses its marginal utility very quickly, right? If you studies of happiness, there's a Harvard professor, many professors, I suppose, and they tell you the same thing in terms of studying happiness around the world. There's very little correlation between how much money you have and the level of happiness past the basic subsistence level. The element that there's the highest correlation with is an element of community, who you're with. So it's this meaningful work. Are you on a mission and meaningful relationships through a life arc that evolves? So that's it. My definition of success is more like evolving well and contributing to evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And those stand so true from my monk training too. So hearing them from you in a different context is so encouraging to hear. And for anyone who's watching or listening right now, please make sure that as Ray is speaking, you're visualizing his beautiful analogies. Because as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm visualizing being in the forest. I'm visualizing being around people. I'm looking at the people in my life and seeing them as different aspects. And Ray paints such a beautiful picture as he speaks. So if you're listening right now, anytime he shares an analogy or a story, put yourself in that place, because it's going to help you go there deeper. And I think you do a brilliant job of that, Ray. And some of your videos I saw as well, the animations really bring that to life. So I can see them in my mind. Tell us about how you've been so careful about curating and constructing that community for yourself. You said that you found people in the woods who could see what you couldn't see, and you protected each other, which I love.
It was an evolutionary process, you know. So you're on a mission. You're on a mission.
Yes.
And you have people who are on the mission with you.
Yes.
And then you start to I started to find what do I want in those people, and what should the relationship be. And I first just picked people I liked. And I didn't realize how we see things differently, how we process things so differently. Our minds work so differently. And so when you start to see, let's say, there's a big picture thinker, there's a detail thinker. And we all become frustrated with the other person because they, like the big picture says, why are you so hung up with those details? Let's go to the big picture. And the detail thinker thinks, you've got your head in the clouds.
Yeah.
You've got to come down to the nuts and bolts. And they're both right. And they start to realize that you need each other. You start to need the different ways of thinking. So I would convey that many people see things very differently. And how do you deal with those differences in seeing? They're disagreements. How do you deal with disagreements? My approach, and I learned, is whenever you're in a disagreement and you don't know how to deal with it well because it's not going well, pause and then step above the disagreement together and then say, what are the protocols for us to disagree well? How should we do this thing? Always go to the higher level and think, how should you do that thing? And so you get protocols. I've developed these protocols. Like a protocol would be, like if we're not being able to communicate well together, a standard protocol is let's mutually agree on someone who will help moderate this conversation, and then we'll work things through. Or talking. How do I repeat what you're saying so that I'm conveying that I understand? And you start to develop those types of protocols and start to develop the appreciations of people seeing things differently. You discover also differences in values, differences in the most core principles of how people should be with each other. In my case, it was so essential that we're going to be completely, radically truthful and radically transparent with each other, right? And that was my discovery. And it's difficult. But I've also learned that many cases, the difficult things are only the first order consequences. They're difficult. The second order consequences is they're rewarding. And so by being able to have that radical truthfulness and that transparency to demonstrate that there's no spin was a discovery. So there's an evolutionary arc. I would say in my culture, in my building an organization, a community that was beneficial, I'll describe it in one sentence.
Yes, please.
Long sentence. It's an idea meritocracy. In other words, it's a place where the best ideas win out regardless of hierarchy. So an idea meritocracy, in which the goals are meaningful work and meaningful relationships. Meaningful work to be on a mission together. And meaningful relationships is an equal importance of that. And that produces this tough love. So I'll repeat it. I'm saying it too many words. So it's an idea meritocracy in which the goals are meaningful work and meaningful relationships through radical truthfulness and radical transparency. Anyway, that was my way. That's what worked for me.
That's incredible. And I guess all of these tools you were mentioning earlier about these protocols are to consistently realign everyone with that. Because as we start wearing away and you start seeing lack of transparency or lack of truthfulness or lack of meaning and mission, you're constantly having to realign everyone.
Right. And let's talk about that radical truthfulness and radical transparency. If you can achieve it, there's no confusion. Because if we're really truthful, we're taking all those hidden agendas and all those other things and we're not confused. We're putting them on the table.
Yes.
And if you understand the art of thoughtful disagreement, how to disagree well so that you can then learn from each other or get past your disagreement in an idea meritocratic way, it is incredibly powerful. And we're not taught that. We're not taught some of these things. We're not taught the value of failure.
Definitely not.
We're not taught, we're taught to be right, to be attached to our views of being right.
Yep.
You can't learn if you're attached to being right because you think it's embarrassing because you don't know. So that notion of thoughtful disagreement, because if there's disagreement, somebody must be wrong. And how do you know that wrong person isn't you? So these are the things that if you have thoughtful disagreement, radical truthfulness, radical transparency. You build trust and effectiveness.
Yeah. And that really sounds like it requires the pulverizing of the ego. Like that to me sounds like we really have to crush and break down this ego, because our ego is what's we're confronted with, of believing I'm right, I'm going to win, right? Whenever you're in a disagreement and you handle it badly, you think it's win or loss.
That's right. I think the greatest tragedy of mankind, big statement, the greatest tragedy of mankind.
Wait for it.
The greatest tragedy of mankind, because it stands in the way of so many people making decisions well and operating well with each other, is holding an opinion in your head that's wrong. And it's such a tragedy, meaning it's so easily fixed,
So true.
that all you have to do is put it out there and stress test it and say, I might be wrong. And how do I stress test it? And by stress testing it, you raise your probabilities of being right. So I think the education system rewards being right. So many things reward that being right that stands in the way of taking in all that's out there to really help you be right.
I think that's such a powerful point. I'm just nodding away. If you're only listening, then I'm nodding away, because when you say that, I think that's so true, that all of our conditioned patterns are about being right. It's never been to understand things from different angles or perspectives, which is what reality is much more of than being right or wrong or black or white. And so much of our patterns in our mind are always win or loss, right or wrong, one or two. There's rarely this cohesive synergy that you're speaking about. That actually takes a lot more work to get to.
The greatest, whatever success I've had in life has had much more to do with my knowing how to deal with my not knowing than anything that I know. Because what I don't know is vastly greater. Think about all the experts that you can turn to and all the perspectives that you can get and how much you can learn by what's being out there. And that maximizes, and it's a kick.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things, the other thing, which we've already dived into today, you called your book Principles. And I thought that was quite a counterculture way of doing it, in a good way. And the reason I say that is today, so much of the language around business and work or entrepreneurship is around doing. It's around having. It's around grinding. It's, these are the terms and the language that's used around business, whereas you go back and you talk about principles. And on the phone when we were speaking, you were talking about this differentiation between doing and then living a principled life. Just explain that to us and why you believe we have to start with principles.
I'm going to start by explaining how I learned it.
Yes, please.
And what principled thinking is and how it's different
Amazing.
from other types of normal thinking, what most people do, right?
Yeah.
And there's also a suggestion I'd like to pass along to those who are listening. What I found was that whenever I would make an important decision, I would write down my criteria for making that decision, because that situation would come along again. So I could be clear. It helped me clarify my thinking. And when the next time it came along, I would start to see how to deal with that, and I could refine my principles. So the book is a compendium of these principles that I wrote over 25 years on that situation. It changed my way of thinking, and it also changed my way of interacting, because then I would see everything as another one of those. Rather than be in the blizzard of these bits and pieces of things coming at me, I would start to think, oh, it's one of those.
Yes.
And I would then operate as what was my principle. And those principles became like internalized. So think of it almost like a batter batting against a pitcher who sometimes throws curveballs, sometimes throws fastballs, sometimes throws sliders. And if you do that over a period of time, you begin to learn, oh, that's a fastball. And then you start to think, okay, the fastball, I operate this. And you start to internalize. You become better and better, and life becomes simpler for you because you're not seeing those millions of bits and pieces. You're seeing it as another one of those. And you have that instinctual ability that allows you to then make that decision and operate that way. And then you can communicate with people on principled levels thinking. It's particularly important because I would say the decline of religion, the decline, in other words, even your values. You have to think, what is your religion? If you chose a religion, and it's not a preconditioned religion, what are your values? What are your principles? How do you think life really works? And you're making choices for yourself. That is the form of those principles. So when you start to think about those and you're clear about those and you can communicate with others, you can see whether your principles are aligned with others or not. Because if you don't get along with somebody, and those irreconcilable differences are due to the fact that there are deep differences in principles, not differences in interpretations of things and so on. It's like any great relationship. There'll be arguments along the way, but it is those core beliefs. And by being clear about them, clear to yourself and clear to others, it's very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It just makes it so much more simpler to navigate. Because you're so right that when you don't have that clarity, all you're being attacked with is so much noise. And there's just so many millions of different pieces of noise that are coming at you that you haven't filtered, you haven't clarified, you haven't carefully selected. And that's why we feel so overwhelmed today. We're drowning in all of that noise.
And what for?
Exactly.
Where are you going? What for? What are you seeking to fulfill? What is it in you?
Yeah. And I think that this is where I'd recommend everyone who's listening or watching right now, I'd love for you to take a moment to do that exercise in your own time that Ray's just laid out, of really figuring out what are your criteria behind decisions, why you're making those decisions, what's pushing you towards them. For me as well, whenever I have a number of options, what I do is I write down all my options and choices I have, and I write down on top of them why I would take them. And often my why for something would be just pride or ego, and often above one of them it will be love and depth and values.
Well, here's the exercise. You're talking about the writing down.
Yes.
Okay. I'm saying the writing down. I recommend to your listeners,
please
write them down, okay? Do your reflections, and then you write them down. It helps, it clarifies it. The other thing that happens is, I think of the mind as being, there are almost two yous in you. There is a conscious, logical you, and there's a subliminal, emotional you.
Yes.
That you don't understand. That was Freud's great discovery.
Yes.
That there is a part of your brain that is really controlling you, but because it's not conscious to you, you don't know it's there and it's controlling you. And the key, I think, is to align those things. Like there's intuition or there's those emotions. And when they come up and you're seeing yourself doing things, if you can reflect on yourself and align your subliminal with your cerebral, it helps you because you have a double check. That emotional thing, like maybe it's an intuition. Well, maybe it's right and maybe it's wrong. So respect it. It's coming up, but look at it with that logical. And when you achieve that alignment, writing helps you do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And if you're sitting there going, I'm not a writer, first try. And if after trying, if you still feel you're not a writer, voice note yourself, speak it out to yourself and hear yourself back. Because when you hear, because you're used to listening to other people, you'll also be able to start listening to your subconscious self. And that's going to help you really try and bring that alignment and clarity together.
And then you'll start to see that there's a limited number, maybe a few hundred, maybe a couple hundred circumstances or whatever. You're going to start to see everything happens over and over again. You're going to understand yourself better. It's very wonderful.
Absolutely. I love that. In one of these principles, you talk about this scale of savoring the experience, savoring life, and then making an impact. And I wanted to know how you reconcile the two and how you've seen them grow together.
I think the big choice in life, there are a lot of big choices in life, but is accomplishment versus savoring life. Okay? So, savoring life is smell the roses and what a beautiful day, or that moment, make sure you time with the people that you love and all of that. And then there's the other, which is accomplishment and impact, right? So there is those kinds of choices. And you have to discover yourself. Well, where are you and how do you deal with those types of things? I think to be most effective is where they align.
Right.
Okay. That's I think the key.
Right.
Like to make your work, your passion one and the same, right? That kind of thing.
Yes.
So that's I think that's the best.
Yeah.
Okay. Your accomplishment. If you're passionate and then you can maybe have those things align. But that's the choice in life, right? And you could see that in different cultures.
Yes. Yeah. And today we see today with all of the generations that we're in and seeing in work right now, there's a desire to have it all. There's a desire to have great pay, a great job that's meaningful, and have lots of time off to go on holiday and be able to, go out on a Friday night and have a good time. And I feel like this desire to have everything is quite a challenge because then you striving to have all of these different paths. Go on.
That's what the second phase of the life is like. First phase of the life is, you learn, and really it's generally a lot of fun. And also, by the way, you think you can conquer the universe, and then you come to this other phase where it's all open and so on. And what you find out is there are too many things to do. You don't have enough time. Okay. You don't have enough time for each one of those things. And so the question is, how do you deal with that? Well, there are two ways you can deal with it. You can, of course, prioritize, and you need to do that. But the real way, most importantly, is to know how to get the most out of an hour. In other words, you can put more life into life if you know how to get leverage and if you know how to be as effective. Because if you get more out of each hour, wow, then it's like more life within those constrained number of hours.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've always described that for me as time management versus energy management. And for me, if I can bring all my energy into 1 hour, that's more powerful than me having 10 hours of half the energy.
And in addition, there are techniques.
Right.
Right?
Love to hear some.
Well, like for example, I learned leverage through other people. Once you learn leverage, in my particular case, of course, I built up to this. I have about 30 direct reports. And what it means is, now this is after years of doing, I had nothing, by the way. But what I can do is, and with the good relationships and how that works, basically they can typically work for about 50 hours on something that I'm trying to accomplish for every hour that I deal with them.
Right.
So I get an enormous amount of leverage, or I know how to prioritize, or I know how to break my schedule, knowing I mentioned meditation or other things to get myself the clarity.
Yeah.
So there are many techniques. I wrote a bunch of them in the books, and many other people have other techniques too.
Yeah.
But as you start to realize that you can have much more life by knowing these various types of techniques.
Yeah. I'd love to know some of your tips and techniques around prioritization. I think that's something that people are so challenged with right now. What have been some of your best principles or rules around how to prioritize something?
I don't want to give people my priorities, but I do want to give them the notion of to go above it. Okay, like the same rule, if you're in a disagreement, you go above it. Okay, so many people are in the blizzard of all these things coming at them, and they're in it, and they're trying to deal with every one of those. Okay, so pause and step back, and then start to think, what are you really going after? You have to look subliminally. It may be deep-seated in your childhood. It may be, but what is that pull? Okay, and that becomes, and then how do you apportion it? You do need a plan. You need some sort of self-discipline as you look down and you say, well, I'm going to spend dinners with my kids, or I'm going to do X, Y, Z in terms of those to-dos. But at the highest level, you're saying, what do I want? What are my choices? because you have to realize. And then what I find is if you pause and you do that slowly over time, don't just try to do it in a minute. You can find that you can have a lot of your cake and eat it too, right? I used to take my kids on my business trips.
What a great education. Wow. Crazy.
It's an example that sometimes you discover with time that you can have your cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah.
So take the time.
Yeah, patience. Patience is...
I think that there's 5 steps to success. First is you have to know your goals. You have to know what you're going out there. And that does require prioritization. The second is on your way to your goals, you're going to encounter your problems, your failures, your problems. So that's step 2, encounter them. They're standing in your way. Number 3 is you have to diagnose those to the root cause. What is producing your problems?
At the root.
At the root cause. And that may be that you, or it may be those around you who are not good at things or whatever, or you're doing something you need to do better. Or it may be that you're in the wrong place. But you have to get at the root cause to do that diagnosis. Once you know the specific thing that's standing in your way, that personal discovery process, you have to go to the 4th step. And that 4th step is to design a way to get around them.
Yeah.
If it may be, for example, that if you have a particular weakness, work with somebody who is strong where you're weak. Or it may be change your job or whatever it is, but you've got to get around that specific thing that you've diagnosed as standing in your way. And then when you have a design, you have to do it. A lot of people come up with designs, but they don't push through and do it. And I think life is just the constant 5-step process over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because if you can do those 5 things, you will be successful. You'll evolve fairly quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you add 2 methods or keys to succeeding, which you call flexibility and self-accountability, because within those 5 steps, there's going to need to be a bit of flexibility or a lot of flexibility and self-accountability. And I love you pointed this out. You said, don't blame bad outcomes on anyone but yourself, which is like huge self-accountability.
Yeah. I really do believe, I'll give you a mindset. I do believe that I can do anything and that it is just a matter of my character and my creativity. So that it is a personal test of me. It may be difficult, and I have to be creative enough, and maybe with the help of others. And that is largely true. Really, if you're creative enough and you don't have to do it yourself, you can get the ideas from other people, and then you are enough character in it to do it. Wow.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest challenge, that we try and do it all on our own. We think we have to be everything. We think we have to be the face and the background and the side and everything in between. And actually, collaboration, coming together with other people is so much more what has brought success in the world.
Yes. When you start to realize that actually you can't see, it's like going from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions or black and white to color, that when you start to see things through others' eyes, you can see the world in a totally different, much richer way, and you know how to navigate it. It's such a power, such a gift.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much, Ray. Ray, this has been such an incredible experience diving in with you. Anyone who's listening and watching, I hope you've been taking notes. I hope you stopped and did certain activities when Ray and I spoke about them. And Ray, we finish every interview with a final 5, which is our final 5 quick fire round, rapid fire round. So these are answers that are 1 word to 1 sentence maximum. So I'm going to start with the first one. What's one trait you look for in a potential employee?
Character.
Amazing. Okay, great. Number 2, what is one trait you possess that you believe you got to where you are today? One of your traits.
Fear, humility, fear and acceptance of failing.
Wow. I love that answer. That's awesome. I was not expecting that. It's a great answer. Sorry, I'm going off the tangent now because you can explain that. I love that one.
And a taste for adventure, because the joy
Yeah.
of the adventure, it makes it all worthwhile. And I've come to appreciate the pain.
Yeah. What's the best thing you've learned from this transition in your life where you're now passing it on? What's something you've learned from the process of passing lessons on?
That it's hard and to let go.
To let go of?
To let go of caring
Right,
while
right.
caring.
Right. Yes. That's such an important point. Absolutely. Yeah. As a teacher, as a guide, as a coach, you can only facilitate growth, but you can't force it.
Just let it.
Yes, yeah. You've got to give everyone the opportunity to let it out. Okay. Number 4. What's one thing in stage 3 you're looking forward to the most, to the stage of life that you're in right now?
Well, as Joseph Campbell said, to be free to live and free to die. I think that you're in an arc in which you gain freedom, total freedom, no obligation. The greatest joy now is no obligation.
Yeah.
I'm free.
Yeah. Amazing.
And to watch others be successful without me. That is the greatest joy, to watch others to be successful without me. I'm free and they are successful without me.
Wow. Amazing. Well, you wrote this book over a number of principles, and the 5th and final question is, what's a principle that you've learned this year, or that you're currently trying to learn or learning or testing this year?
Well, this is my transition year. I guess what I've learned, I've been so pleased to have the interactions with people who are learning. I don't know if it's a principle. It's not a principle, but it's an experience that the interactions that I'm having on social media, the conversations, so many nice people, and the exchanges have just been so beautiful. I think that was my main discovery as I'm also going through my evolutionary process of that I described.
I absolutely love that. That's amazing, Ray. You're absolutely incredible. If anyone loved the conversation today, make sure you go and grab a copy of Principles by Ray Dalio. If you haven't already, if you have read the book, which I know many of you are very excited, we were going to have Ray on the podcast, go ahead and follow him on social media and across all the other channels if you don't already. Ray, is there a particular channel that you would prefer everyone to go follow you on? Is there, or every, you've got Facebook, there's Instagram, there's YouTube. Go ahead and follow Ray across all the channels. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you grab a copy of the book. Today, we just literally scratched the surface of all the incredible principles that are inside.
I'd like to add one thing.
Sure, please.
I put the book and also video case studies and everything in a free app.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to buy a book. You can get the book. It's on the iOS Apple store. It's a free download, and it has videos.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Free.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
So the book is great if you like books, but you also have this other video, which is a live. You might like that.
That's awesome. And there's so many great episodes that I've been watching on Ray's social channels as well that really break down and visualize these principles for you to check out. Thank you so much for being a subscriber to On Purpose. Rate and review this podcast. And most importantly, share what you learned. There were so many great insights from Ray today, so many great moments of wisdom and principles. Extract them, share them on Twitter, or on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, and I'll share my favorite ones as well. Make sure you tag Ray and I in those messages, and we can't wait to see you again next week. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So grateful. Yeah. Thank you. I hope that was good for you. Thank you so much. If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.
Keep noticing who you are, noticing awareness, asking yourself, am I aware? It's so interesting because when you notice who you are, you feel this absolute relief travel all through your body, which means prior to that, you were tense, you were holding on to life.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every single one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now today I have the honor and privilege to sit down with one of my favorite authors, someone who has impacted millions of lives over the last couple of decades, and someone that I was just sharing with, I never believed I'd ever get the opportunity to sit down with. Because back in 2006 and before, when I was reading her work and interacting with the work that she was doing in the world, I never believed I'd get this opportunity. And so today I feel extremely grateful to be sitting down with the one and only Rhonda Byrne. And for those of you that don't know, and I mean, there'll literally be like 0.3% of you that may not know, but is an internationally renowned best-selling author that is best known for a documentary and book titled The Secret. Rhonda's work has massively transformed millions of lives around the world, and her newest work is a continuation of her previous insights, and it's called The Greatest Secret. I've just finished reading this book. I genuinely cannot wait for it to be in your hands, and so we'll be putting the link to the book with the podcast, so make sure that you go and grab this whenever you have that moment during this conversation, that you're accessing The Greatest Secret. Rhonda, welcome to On Purpose, and thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, Jay, thank you so much. Do you know, as you were doing that intro, I got very teary because when you're mentioning changing the lives of millions of people, it really, to this day, you know, it just affects me. It's so humbling. And I'll receive a letter from somebody, and it's like the very first time that I've read a letter and somebody's life has changed, and it's never altered over the years. It just affects me the same way. So I just had a total meltdown listening to you then. So thank you.
That's amazing. I love hearing that, because I feel so similarly that it's such a honor and humbling opportunity to have an impact on anyone. And so I love hearing you say that, and it's so beautiful. And I know I heard recently that you actually moved, and you moved home. Is that true?
That's true.
And I
Yes.
was going to start there, because I almost feel like the act of moving is such an interesting journey in and of itself, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I wanted to ask you what your move was like and what that journey was like on each of those levels.
Well, I love it because you always end up by throwing material things out. You know, I don't need this and I don't need that. So it's a real cleansing to move, I think, and go through everything. And I don't need any of these things anymore. And I mean, sometimes I give away things and then I'm like, oh gosh, I really did need that. But who cares? You know, who cares? But do you know, can you believe this? I moved next door to where I was. Next door. Right?
Oh,
is
wow.
is that crazy or what? And so I'm on a property that is 85 acres of orchards and avocados and oranges and lemons and all of those things. And what absolutely gets me all of the time in life, and I never tire of it, is the way that life or the universe always lines up everything I've ever loved in my life. And so always, absolutely always, like open fires. And this property has deer walking all over it. And for me, coming from Australia, we don't have deer in Australia. And so it's just, oh my God, so amazing to wake up in the morning and there are deer outside my bedroom window. And I mean, just squirrels jumping everywhere. And so, yeah, it was really, really beautiful, a beautiful move, actually. And it was effortless, absolutely effortless. And kind of a new, you know, when you move, it's sort of a new. But then at the same time, you take you with you wherever you go, right? And so,
Yes.
and so it's always really good to just be working on the inner part of ourselves, because then when you take you with you, you have a fabulous life.
What was the thing that you were happy to let go of physically or emotionally of that space? And what was something that you rediscovered, maybe that you'd forgotten about, that you thought, oh, I actually am excited to take this with me?
Actually, I had moved a year earlier. So I'd had a massive cleanse when I moved. I had been in a really, really, really big house for like 15 years. And so that was amazing because I was just giving away everything. Would you like this? Would you like this? And so this move wasn't as great because I'd already cleaned everything out for the year before. And so let me think. I mean, the things that I loved about the house that I was in was the incredible sunrises and sunsets, and that I got to see those. That house had massive orange trees everywhere. And so the orange blossom was absolutely intoxicating. I think, Jade, all the things I love in life are the things that are free. They're not anything that kind of money buys. And the house that I was in was full of light and absolutely beautiful. But then the house that I've moved to, and it didn't have open fires, the other house, and I love open fires. And then the house that I've moved to has open fires. It has all of the light. It has the orange trees, the orange blossom. It has a beautiful view across the oceanfront views. So it has the sunrises and the sunsets. And so it's just everything kind of lined up for me with the house that I'm in after being in the previous house. But I'm trying to think of things that, really, I think I just gave away mostly kind of clothes and things like that, and a few appliances and just sort of things like that, in my previous house, I gave away everything. I gave away barbecues. I was like saying to people, do you need a juicer? Do you need this? Do you need that? And I was just giving away absolutely everything, which I love. And when I moved from Australia to the United States, this was just prior to The Secret being released, I came with 2 suitcases. That was it. I left my home, everything that I had collected over, 20 years or whatever it was. I left it all behind and I came here with two suitcases, and it was for the release of The Secret. And I just intuitively knew that the United States would be the country that lit The Secret up first, and that I needed to be in the States. So I traveled here. I had 2 suitcases, and then everything that I owned back there, I gave it away. I gave it all away. Absolutely everything. Yeah, except for 2 things. 2 things that I ended up by having shipped over. That one you can see behind me there, that tapestry. Right? Can you see that?
Yes, I can see it.
And see that Buddha.
Yes,
that Buddha. And
I
those
love
2
that.
things, those 2 things I brought with me, they were just like really special to me. But everything else I gave away. So I'm really good at letting things go, and I'm great now at letting things go. Especially material things. I'm not really attached, Jay, anymore. I had decades of attachment, and I don't think attachment in the end's a lot of fun. So,
absolutely.
I mean, it's really beautiful, and I have all of open space here, and I think that reflects the way that I feel inside. And my journey of the greatest secret is just like this freedom and openness to life, and just this trust and faith in life, this total faith that life has got everything under control.
Yes. Well, let's start there at the beginning of The Greatest Secret. You share this beautiful thought around how, what keeps us from the greatest secret is a belief. And I really liked how, despite the incredible success of The Secret, you've continued on this journey to continually seek for a deeper secret and the greatest secret, as you call it. And you say that a belief has been blocking us this whole time from this secret. Tell us about this belief. Where does this block of a belief come from? And how has it created such a strong hold on each and every single one of us?
Well, the belief is that we are separate and that we are individual, and that all that we consist of, all that makes us up, is just a body and a mind. And I think the majority of people would consider that they're a body and a mind, and the name that they've been given and the story of their life. And I was born here, and parents did this, and I do this for a living, and siblings, and the story that we then we identify with and carry around with us. And those stories, it doesn't matter what the story is, it doesn't matter how fabulous your life has been, it does not compare to who we really are. And so we have this belief that we are limited, basically, in a nutshell, that we're a limited individual, that we're born and that we die. And that's kind of it. And the truth is we are so much more than that. We are certainly having the experience of being an individual, and we're certainly having a human experience, but ultimately it is not who we are, and we were never born, and we never die. And we are, if I were to sum up everything that we are, it's almost the opposite to everything we strive to be. So we are all the intelligence that there is. We are all the beauty that there is. We're all the happiness that there is. We are pure love without any judgment whatsoever. We are complete and utter freedom, which is why freedom means so much to us, why we will fight and struggle to be free. And so we have total knowing of absolutely everything in the moment of knowing it. We are infinite and we are eternal. And that is what is actually experiencing this particular form. And so we have a belief that we are an individual, that we're separate, that we're born and that we die. And our mind reaffirms that over and over and over again through all of its thoughts, and with everything we say, with every thought and every single thing that we say. And actually, doesn't the world affirm that over and over, that we're separate? But we are unlimited. We are absolute perfection. And I'm not talking about the name or the ego. I'm not talking about that, because we all can see what egos can get up to. You know, they can cause a lot of trouble. Egos want approval. They want attention. They want to be right all the time. They judge all of the time. And so, you know, they're not something to attach ourselves to and to identify with, when we are this incredible being that is blissful happiness. And so we can have a life where we are living as an individual human, having an individual human experience, but from the perspective of the infinite being that we are, in which case we will never be touched by negativity, no matter what happens, and we will remain in lasting happiness no matter what. And this has been my journey, really, from the secret to now. And I was searching 7 days a week. I was just like one of those crazy people. I'm like, if there is this law that governs our mind, then there is definitely way, way more to discover. And so I just searched in religions and spiritual traditions and read thousands of books. And it wasn't until 2016 that I had this experience where I realized who we are. And I was like, why haven't I seen this? Why haven't I? What is it? How could I have missed this? And from that moment of realizing that, there was this happiness that arose inside of me. And then with everything that I did from 216 to 220, that happiness just became deeper and deeper. And then I would just notice things like that person, you know, when they would do something or other, they used to bother me a lot. That didn't bother me anymore. And how was I ever bothered by that? And that particular subject doesn't bother me anymore. And so I was just finding that I wasn't reacting to life. The reactions were all dissolving. Judgment was dissolving. I was just, whatever was happening, I'm like, it's fine, it'll be okay. And so with letting go of all of those things, including the belief that we're a limited being, we become free, really, truly free. And then we will live a life that's described as heaven on earth or nirvana, a life where we know we don't die. And the body ends, sure, but who we are does not. And so, yeah, that's been that's been my journey. That's been my journey.
Well, it's beautiful hearing it, because I was very fortunate enough to at least learn about that intellectually when I was 18 and I first met the monks that I lived with. And then when I went and lived as a monk for 3 years in India and across Europe when I was 22 to 25, the texts that we studied, whether it was the Vedas or the Gita, introduced me to that, at least intellectually. And I say at least intellectually because I believe that a lot of these ideas begin at intellect before they truly become realized.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think in 2016, it was a realization of who I am, but was I completely living that? No, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I've lost it. Now, I had it and now I've lost it. And of course you can't lose it because it's who you are, but you've got to go, you've kind of got to go on this, a bit of a journey. You don't have to. There are some people that, oh gosh, they will just hear it and that's it. They will live it. They will live like that for the rest of their life. Yes. And they are just in joy. And I've had some letters from some people that has happened to. For me, it was more of a journey. And but oh wow, when you just it definitely intellectually is the beginning, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, because that's where you start, and
Absolutely.
then it's sort of the diligence to keep noticing who you are, noticing awareness, noticing, asking yourself, am I aware, is, one way to begin. Am I aware? And even in Secret, I talk about that, remember to remember that you're aware and to be aware. And so you just keep coming back to noticing who you are. It's so interesting because when you notice who you are, you feel this absolute relief travel all through your body, which means prior to that, you were tense, you were holding on to life, the kind of white knuckle and everything. And so, oh my gosh, it's just like this incredible thing that we have, and then and then you look out and you see people suffering, and that part's really challenging because you want to help everybody, and so that they don't suffer anymore. And I remember with my teacher really early on, and I would be like, oh, I've lost it, and why don't I have it all of the time? And she would say, oh, because you haven't suffered enough. Is what she would say to me. You need to suffer some more, and then you really, 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 it's going to mean more to you than anything else in life. And it's a wonderful thing. But oh my gosh, in your 20s, Jay, heaven.
I remember learning that definition, which you described so beautifully, of Satchitananda. And the idea that we are full of knowledge, eternal, and full of bliss. And I remember one of the ways we were trained to understand that is we had no mirrors in the ashram. And without a mirror, you lost conception of your physical self because you no longer could check how you looked. And the other one was, I remember when I first started, and I know you used the beautiful word awareness in The Greatest Secret. I remember I used to write on a little Post-it note when I'd wake up in the morning, I'd have it next to my bedside table, and then on the by the place where I brush my teeth, that I am awareness.
Did you really?
Yeah,
gosh, that's beautiful.
To remind myself in the morning to wake up with the understanding that I'm not this body.
Oh, brilliant. That is brilliant. People should do that. People should do that. I mean, that is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I am awareness. Because the moment that you say, like, our mind can't comprehend awareness, it can't comprehend it. The mind is sitting in awareness. And so the really beautiful thing is that saying something like I am awareness or am I aware, the mind just goes quiet, just really quickly. And when the mind's quiet, then all that there is awareness or consciousness or whatever. The word doesn't matter. I tried to choose the word that I felt was the simplest, that people could kind of understand. But the moment the mind drops, there is awareness. And so, I love that. I am aware. Love it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was, that's why when I was reading your book, and I hope you can tell, like when I was reading your book, I felt so happy because when you were sharing this was the greatest secret, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think there is a deeper secret at the beginning of knowledge. And we were always told that this is the first lesson you'll learn and the one that will take you your whole life to live, like to actually practice. And so when I was reading the book, it was so beautiful for me because I could totally see how much you care for people and for what journey you want them to take. But isn't it fascinating that we almost, and you said something really beautiful, and you talk about in the book about how actually we are free and we have complete freedom, but we limit ourselves. But isn't it fascinating that we think that the body and mind keep us safe? So like the very things that are actually keeping us imprisoned, we think that they are our safety.
Totally. And don't you think, also with what's happened in the last year, that we had this idea, or most people have this idea that they work really, really hard to get safety and security, to accrue things and to have money in the bank and to have a house and all of those things, to have safety and security. And this world event that came along shook that and actually showed everybody what is the truth. And that is that we will never find safety and security in the world. And the reason we won't is it's always changing, always changing. But we are the only safety and security in existence. We're trying to get on the outside what we are on the inside. And that is not to say to enjoy this incredible world. I mean, this is a miracle. This is miraculous, this experience of this world. And it is here for us to enjoy in every way that each person wants to enjoy it. But to know who we are, to instead of spending a whole life trying to fill ourselves from the outside world, which will never, ever work, is to spend just a little bit of time on the inside, like waking up to I am awareness, or asking, am I aware? And one of the things that I found that was really fantastic, and there's so many incredible practices, and I'm sure, oh my gosh, you would have done so many fabulous ones. I would love to hear about that. One of the things that all of the things in The Greatest Secret, all of the things that I did, and the teachers that are in The Greatest Secret were my journey, all of them from The Secret through to now. Every single one of them changed my life in one way or another. Some I followed for a couple of years and some for a month. But all of those teachers played a really, really big part in my life. And so the practice in The Greatest Secret that had the greatest effect on me, and that I would say for anybody, is the best thing you can ever, ever, ever do. And that is to never resist negative emotions, and instead to do the exact opposite, which is what we have not been told to do, which is the opposite to resistance is to welcome. So resist is push away, and welcome is to pull in.
Embrace, yeah.
Embrace. Exactly. And to embrace those negative emotions, because the most incredible thing happens when we do embrace them, when we allow them to be there, when we don't try and change them, when we don't want to make them go or do anything, but just allow them to be there, they just evaporate. And the more that you do it, the faster they evaporate. Because when I started, I would feel a strong emotion and it would maybe last 30 seconds, 45 seconds or something like that, and then gradually ebb away. But the more that I welcome, the weaker they get. Each time you welcome a negative emotion, it just gets weaker, until you don't have a trace of that negative emotion in the body at all anymore. And when you don't have a trace of it, you're never going to feel it.
Explain to us, as you do in the book, what does it mean to truly embrace and welcome a negative feeling? What does that mean in practice? Because I couldn't agree with you more. And just to help people as they're listening and watching, they're thinking, you know what, right now, there's so much negativity in the world. I'm watching the news. I'm stressed out about this. My kids are at home. I'm having to homeschool. How do they welcome that? And I agree with you. We resist completely. We don't want to feel negative.
We don't want to, because it's not pleasant, feeling negative feelings. So when you feel a negative feeling arise in you, notice the feeling. Don't focus into the feeling, because if you focus into it, you'll just make it stronger. The mind is really powerful, so don't focus into it, but notice the feeling. And just welcome it. So it's almost like you could imagine just putting your arms out like this, arms out to the side of you, and just allowing the feeling, which is simply energy. That's all it is. Even fear, it's just energy, and just allowing it to pass on through. One thing that I did was I would imagine putting my arms around and embracing the feeling and pulling the feeling in close to me. And I just found that was amazing for me. I think people can try all kinds of different things. Like, I just imagined that feeling was one of my oldest, dearest friends that I love so much that I hadn't seen in decades. And they arrived at my door. And I was just like, could not get my arms around them fast enough. And that is what I imagined with each of the feelings. And I mean, at one point in my life, I did that with depression. And so and that's really how I learned how powerful this practice is, because when I wrapped my arms around the depression, it just dissolved. And the relief, the relief that you feel when a negative feeling dissolves is so good. It's worth every second. It's like a high. And the reason it's like a high is because when you dissolve the feeling, there's you underneath and who you really are. And so you get a flash of who you really are, this kind of joy and happiness. And so, yeah, that's what I did. I would embrace the feeling and hold it in without focusing on it. Notice it, but don't focus into the feeling, and just let it dissolve. And I promise the next time you feel that feeling, it will never be as strong when you do it. And so you do the same thing the next time that feeling arises. And then the time after that, it's going to be weaker. It just gets weaker and weaker and weaker until you get to a point where you're like, I can't remember the last time that I got angry. I just can't remember. When did I ever get angry? You just, or agitated or impatient, and so you do it with every feeling. So to give people a really good guide, I would say that unless you're feeling really happy, joyously happy, welling up inside of you, you have a negative feeling. Pretty good. You don't need to know what the name of it is to welcome it. You just welcome it. It doesn't matter about its name. Doesn't matter what it is. Just welcome the feeling, or embrace the feeling, or allow the feeling to be there. And then you will begin to dissolve these negative feelings that are actually masking who you are. The more you dissolve them, the greater the happiness arises within you.
Beautiful. I love that. And I encourage everyone right now who's listening and watching to do that practice, to give it a go, to experience it and experiment with it, because what Rhonda's saying is something that it needs to be experienced. It needs to be felt. It needs to be put into practice. It's not something that you need to overthink or overanalyze. Actually do it and feel it, and you'll figure out how it works for you. Rhonda, I'm intrigued. What is the first thing you do in the morning to start your day? What is it that you do that you feel starts your day? Because I feel that a lot of the times what I'm noticing, especially now in the culture we live in, whether it's reaching for our phone, whether it's looking at the news, we're starting our day with energy that's already putting us in the wrong direction or pushing us in the wrong direction. What are you doing? What are you encouraging people to do first thing in the morning to start with this understanding that we are awareness, to start with this understanding that negative feelings need to be embraced?
It's so amazing because the first thing I do now is I lay in bed and as awareness. So I be awareness. And I just lay there for a particular amount of time, just feeling the joy and the freedom of the eternal being that we are, and just lay in awareness. And so that's what I do absolutely every single morning. And what's extraordinary now, I mean, at the beginning, it was like I felt like I had to remember to do that, but that doesn't even kind of make sense. But I that's what I felt. I felt like I had to remember to do it. And now, at the moment I open my eyes, is just awareness just fills the room, and the joy just fills the room. And so I lay in that. Prior to that, I would wake up every day in gratitude.
Yeah.
Prior to that was gratitude was, and Jay, even now, if life gets a bit bumpy or something happens, just something not really negative, but just something where everything isn't flowing, then I will just look at gratitude and through awareness, just be so grateful for the fact that we are this infinite being and that no one dies. I'm so grateful to be aware of this and to know this. It's quite, that's also quite humbling that somehow or another in this lifetime is that I had this awakening and realization of this. And because as you say, I agree with you 100%. There is nothing greater than knowing who you are. There's nothing. There will never be anything greater than that. 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, nothing will be greater than knowing who you are and being who you are. And it's just step by step, little step by step. And now's a really good time because the ego is being challenged. The mind is being challenged. It's being hit on all sides with the disharmony and the disruption on the planet. And so now is the best time ever to really welcome those emotions and to look in the direction of who you are instead of who you are not. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And I just want to address, because I feel like someone may be listening to us and thinking, well, Rhonda, Jay, how does this help me be successful, be happy, live the life I want? How does this create it? And I just want to dive into what Rhonda's going to have to say about this, but I just want to address it from how I see it. The understanding is very simple, that as Rhonda's saying, we're not our body. And if we think we're our body, we will surround ourselves with things that are good for the body. But if we're not the body, then none of those things can actually satisfy us. And an example that we'd always learn from the Vedic tradition was a fish out of water. That if you took a fish out of water, you could give it a mansion, you could give it a car, you could give it jewelry, you could give it money, but that fish will die because it's not in water. It's not where it belongs, and it isn't in its natural habitat. And so similarly, understanding that we are awareness gives us the opportunity to do what is right for us as awareness, to truly feed that awareness. Because I think the challenge that we think about when we think about success or happiness, we think of success and happiness on the basis of the body and the mind. And that's why even after accumulating everything, we still feel dissatisfied because those things only touch the body and mind. Correct, Rhonda?
Correct. And really the best thing that could happen to everybody is that their greatest dream comes true. Because when your greatest dream comes true, the dream that where you are absolutely convinced that when this dream comes true, that is when I will really be happy. The best thing that can happen is that dream comes true, because when it does, you will realize that there is something missing, and that happiness that you thought you would have doesn't last. And so it's such a beautiful thing. And for people who have been successful, then they get to that point and they're like, they're not happy. And they're not happy because those things were never going to make you happy in the first place anyway. And so, but in terms of success, I would say this, that when you are who you really are, when you're living from the place more of who you are than who you are not, everything that you need and want will fall into your hands effortlessly. And you are actually, the infinite being is effortless. And the way to kind of tell who's in charge is whether it's the ego or the mind that's in charge, or who you really are that is in charge in any moment, is effort. And if you're efforting, if you can feel this efforting, then it's the ego and the mind. And if you're coming from a place of effortlessness, where athletes call it being in the flow, and everybody has these kind of descriptions, it's where the mind has stopped and just everything is flowing. You just feel like everything in the universe is just dancing your dance and singing to your song. And so in terms of success, when you are being more of who you are, that idea that was going to make you successful is what will come to you, that original idea, because the mind just recycles. That's all it can do. It's a program and recycles. And the ideas that business ideas that have never been on earth, they are coming from awareness. They are coming from above the mind. So when you are awareness, that is when everything will fall into your hands, everything that you need. And it just, your whole life flows and you're just happy all of the time. It's just like the universe is just saying, and I even wrote in The Secret, the shortcut to the secret is be happy now, right? Just be happy. Let go of all of the things that you're saying why you can't be happy, and just be happy now. Because when you're happy, everything just falls into place. It's so amazing. So definitely for success, that is the fastest way to success, is to be who you are. And it's not, we're not talking about going in a cave or doing anything like that. We are talking about living your life in the incredible form and human being that you are, and having the experience that you are, but from a place of knowing that you are the infinite being, that you are immortal. And we are taught, as Jay said, it's got to be through your experience. It can't be through, I heard, Rhonda talk about this and whatever. No, not interested in you taking on another belief. What it is for you to experience it. And it is not hard for you to experience it, because it's who you are already. It's not anything that you have to go out and get. In some ways, it's almost frustrating, isn't it? I remember when I started out, I'm like, it's who I am already. But at the time, I'd be like, I can tell the mind's taken over at the moment. And it's already who we are. And so what we've done is we've attributed everything that is awareness to the mind. We've given the mind the whole thing. And it's awareness that is hearing these words right now. That is what's hearing these words, right? That is what is seeing through these eyes. It's awareness. Without awareness, we wouldn't even know we're alive.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing, Rhonda, that I've heard a lot of people say that when they first saw an autopsy or they went to a funeral, that's when they realized they weren't the body. Like that was when if you haven't seen an autopsy, I recommend everyone finds a way to visit the hospital and see that allows us to disconnect from we're not this physical body. We get that. But I feel that for a lot of people, like you rightly said, it's difficult to think we're not the mind because, like you said, we have given the mind all of awareness. We think that that is us. So I think a lot of people are getting to the understanding that we are not this body. I think people can get there to some degree, at least in their mind. But then a lot of us struggle to get behind, well, if I'm not the mind, then what else is there? Tell us about how you start seeing the fallibility of us thinking we're the mind.
So let's just investigate and look at the mind and what the mind is. And so it's really good for you to find out what the mind is, especially considering that most of us have given it total authority over our life. And we believe all of the thoughts that it produces, and which is the voice in your head. And the voice in your head is not who you are. So that was a really big revelation for me. So all that the mind is made of is thought. Beginning to end, full stop. It's thought. And so it's memory, which is thought. And it has images, which is just thought in pictures, but it's still thought. And the current thoughts that we think. And so all that the mind is made of thought. And so without a single thought, and check for yourself, the mind isn't there. If there's no thought, there's no mind. And so when you begin to look at that and investigate that, then it's really quite interesting. But then so now we know that the mind is just thought. And therefore, when a thought comes and a thought goes, if we were our mind, then that means that when a thought comes and when a thought goes, a little bit of us would go with it. And then when a thought comes and a thought goes, a little bit more of us would go with the thought. If we were our mind, a bit of us would be disappearing with every single thought. But if you look at it, guess what? You are there, aware, before a thought comes, and you're there after it leaves. So how can you be the mind? And the other thing is, what is aware of the thoughts in your head? Awareness is aware of the thoughts in your head because a thought is not aware. A thought has no awareness whatsoever. And so the one that is aware of the thoughts is who you really are. And so when you start to and just sort of sit with this a little bit, I'm not suggesting that, in this moment you're like, I know I'm not the mind. But if you just kind of sit with this, and next time when you've got a whole lot of thoughts coming through your head, that you remember this and think about it. I was here before all of these thoughts, and I am still here after they go, fully intact. None of me has disappeared. And what was it that was aware? Because you could even ask this question: am I the thoughts that I think, or am I the one that is aware of those thoughts?
We never say I mind, we say my mind or my body, or we say my car, because we realize that we are not it, right? You don't say I mind, you know. So it's so clear to us in even our language that it's my mind. That means my mind belongs to something that is me. And hence the question is, who am I? Because it's my body and my mind. And I think what you just shared so beautifully is exactly that, is that it is something that is existing beyond the purview of the mind and thought simply. And for anyone who's wondering and trying to intellectually wrap their head around this, the reason why it's so powerful to understand this is because then the negativities of the mind and the body start to affect you less, because you realize that they are not you and that they are not your life. And that's the key, that, you know, if anyone's wondering, well, how does this help me? That's how it helps you, is because you start to recognize that what happens to the body, just like if your car has an accident, you may feel a little bit of pain, but you don't feel the same pain as when something affects your body directly. and the car is a shell. And so similarly, you start realizing that I'm a driver inside my body and my mind. And so even though my body's hurt, yes, obviously I need to go to the hospital and take care of it, of course, but that still isn't me.
No, and you know, Lester Levinson, who is in the who's no longer in physical form, but who's quoted in The Greatest Secret, and he would say that that our mind is just being created for one reason and one reason only, and that is to create what we want. That's it, full stop. That's its job. That's its tool to create what we want in this life and what we want to experience in this life. And that it's not our psychiatrist, psychologist, psychotherapist, and tells us what to do and believing our thoughts. And Jay, I believe my thoughts for decades. It's just amazing that you would believe these thoughts in your head. And if people just notice the next time, and I hope there's no next time, but that you feel agitated or negative emotion or feel stressed, it's because you were believing a whole lot of negative thoughts. That's it. You were just believing thoughts. And then that sends you, into negativity. And so our freedom is, the mind is wonderful, a fantastic tool. Nothing wrong with the mind. The only problem comes with the mind is when we think it is who we are. That's the only problem.
And you give this analogy, which I loved. You talk about how we're in this dream state, and there's a need for awakening from that, because when you're asleep, right? When you're asleep, and I think a lot of people feel that. I think people right now feel an awakening in their life that's coming. Tell us about the awakening you're speaking about.
I just think you know when you've woken up. I just think you know when you've woken up, because like if you're wondering, oh, am I asleep now? Have I woken up? When you wake up, you feel incredible. You feel so much lighter than you've ever felt. You feel so much freer, happier. Life just becomes miraculous. Everything is a miracle. The little things that you just kind of ignored before now are just things that will bring you to your knees, because the sheer beauty and love of those things, like sunsets. And I remember in my life, I would hear people speak of these things. And I remember I used to think, I just need to be able to pay my bills, forget about sunsets and all that kind of thing, But as you awaken, it just frees you from all of the limitations and all of the conditioning that we've all had in our lives. No one's to blame for that. It's just kind of part of the journey. And you just become free. The feeling is incredible. And people can have lots of little awakenings, can they not, along the way, like a little, and it's usually when you've seen through some belief that you're like, oh my gosh, I used to believe that, and that isn't true. And then you just suddenly feel lighter and freer. And so awakening is just a big one of those. It's just a huge sort of realization. It's like a wow moment, but instead it's a wow moment. Everyone can have it. There isn't anybody that can't have it. Everybody can have it because it's who you are already.
What are some of the daily rituals that people can do to experience what you're speaking about? Because as we both know, it isn't a life hack, or it isn't an app download, or it isn't it isn't a mechanical, operational, logistical, read this 3-page, it's not that. So what is it? Like, how do we make it more tangible for our tangible minds? Because our minds are wanting to do something daily and repetitively, because it is repetition. There is repetition. What would you say we can do daily?
Well, one of the things that you can do, which really helps disidentify with the body and the mind, is to take. Let me see. So first of all, take your body and just put your body aside over there, because you are not the body. So just like put that aside for the moment. That is not who you are. You can pick up the body in a minute or two, but just put the body aside, and then put aside your name and the age and the description of you, and also put aside the story of who you think you are. Put all of that aside. So now the body's aside, the story's aside, all of those other things are aside. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take the mind, and just for a moment, you're going to put the mind aside. And that includes all memory and all thoughts and all feelings. And you're just going to put that aside as well. Just pop that aside. And now very quickly notice what is left. Because what is left is awareness. And so that is one way, that's a really good way in the beginning to come back to awareness. And it's like, I think in ancient traditions, some of them spoke about, it's like peeling the onion, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of us accruing, we think we have to pile on all this knowledge and everything. We go through life and, I need to learn more, and I need to accrue more, and I need to get all of these degrees, and all of that has its place, but it's never going to set you free. And so peeling away what we are not and seeing awareness is what will set you free. And once you can get to the place, honestly, the way that I did it was, and I put it in the book, and it's 3 steps. I would ask myself multiple times in the day, am I aware? And the moment I would ask, am I aware, awareness would be there. There would be this awareness. And then I would go about my day, and then I would ask again, am I aware? So I did that constantly. That's a practice to do constantly. After a while, actually really short amount of time, days really, or a week or 2 weeks, when you go to ask, am I aware, you can't even ask the question, because awareness is just completely there immediately. And so the second step is, the first step transforms into the second step. So you go from asking the question, am I aware, to automatically noticing awareness. So then lots of times in the day, notice awareness. And then the third step is stay as awareness. And the second step merges into the third step, because when you notice awareness enough, then you're going to find that you are staying as awareness more. And so what happens is, just so people understand, what happens is the mind is kind of potentially for many in the foreground at the moment and sort of running your life. And awareness is so quietly, beautifully, magnificently, quietly sitting in the background. But when you ask the question, when you notice awareness, stay as awareness, what happens is there's a total shift, and awareness comes to the foreground and the mind goes to the background. And that way you can use the mind whenever you need to use the mind. It's great to make a date, like for us, doing this podcast. It's really great for things like that. But then you can stay as awareness, and then your life is just absolutely effortless, and you just have incredible happiness. And that's where it all is.
I love that, Rhonda. It's been beautiful discussing this with you, because I love that you're really, I really do believe it is this. You're really challenging all your readers and the people in the world to go beyond the body and the mind, which really means to go beyond the desires of the body and the mind, which is really difficult because we've been trained to believe that the desires of the body and the mind are what will make us happy. And so I commend you and feel great joy that you're putting this message out there and encouraging people to go in this direction. And I want to ask you now what we call the final 5. These are your final 5 questions. And we do them in a fast 5 rapid fire. So each answer has to be 1 word to 1 sentence maximum. So Rhonda, these are your final 5. And the first question is, what is your biggest lesson from the last 12 months?
Discovering awareness.
Beautiful. What are you hoping to manifest in 2021?
Freedom and joy for as many people as possible.
What do you know to be absolutely true about human nature that many would disagree with?
That is ultimately not our true nature. Human nature is not ultimately our true nature.
Question number 4. If you could create one law that everyone else in the world had to follow, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Oh, happiness is mandatory.
Yeah, that's
right. I would have the law of happiness, because then everything would be totally fine.
I love it. And question number 5, final question. Beautiful, very quick, concise answers, very, very clear and amazing. 5th and final question. What is one truth that you try to live by every day?
As I try and live by, as who I really am. So the infinite being that we all are, and awareness that I am, that is the most important thing in my life.
Everyone, that's Rhonda Byrne, The Greatest Secret. If you want to dive deeper into your personal, eternal journey, then this book is a phenomenal guide to doing just that. It's a lot heavier than it looks too. It's a heavy
I know,
book.
right?
It's a heavy, chunky book.
What happened there?
It's the truth. The truth is heavy, so it's a heavy book. It's a beautiful book. I highly recommend it to everyone who's listening and watching today. Rhonda, it's been a joy spending this time with you. I really look forward to meeting you in person and getting to do this again in person one day. And I'm really excited for all your readers, the millions of people that will read this book and take that next step in their journey towards discovering who they truly are beyond the body and mind. If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.
And the challenge I always give to my audience is think about someone you really adore and really love. Just absolutely are spectacularly faithful about. If they were putting in their body what you're putting in your body, what would you tell them? Because whatever that is, tell that to yourself.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to On Purpose. I'm so excited for this episode. I know that you are focused on growing your purpose, growing your passion, and improving your life, work, and love every single day and every single week here with me. And I'm always trying to find guests that I believe can truly help you transform that. Today's guest is someone that I've admired for a very, very long time. I've been a follower and fan of his work for a long time as well. So I'm so excited to have this opportunity to sit down with him here in New York City and ask him about his thoughts, his background, and his story, and of course, his purpose. He doesn't really need an introduction. He's a multiple New York Times best-selling author. He has an incredible show on TV. He's none other than Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz, thank you so much for this opportunity.
It's a great pleasure to meet you, Jay.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for inviting us into your space and allowing us to gate crash.
We fixed the feng shui for you. Got the whole studio back. This is the back part of the studio.
Okay.
But it's working.
It works for us. It works for us. And like I said to you just before we started, I've been a long-term fan and admirer of your work. I think it's incredible what you've done. And so again, I'm very grateful for this opportunity. But I want to start by helping my audience just learn about you as a whole. I just find people's stories fascinating. And I think as people grow and continue to have incredible careers, people who find out about them later on don't get to see that side of it. Yeah. And so I'd love to go back to 7 years old when you actually decided you want to be a doctor, which seems very, very early. What sparked that in your life?
So the name Mehmet is Turkish.
Yes.
The last name Oz is my real last name. It has 2 dots over it in Turkish. My parents were immigrants to this country. And my father is a physician, just passed actually, 93 years of age. And when I was 7 years of age, we had moved to a town, Wilmington, Delaware. We were foreigners. I mean, didn't understand the culture. I didn't know some English words, even though I was speaking English with all my friends in school. And as an outsider, my dad was trying to pass along things to me that he thought might be helpful as I grew up. And we were in an ice cream shop. I'll never forget. It's called Patterson's Ice Cream. It had the best vanilla fudge. So I'm waiting for my ice cream. And there was a kid in front of me who was about 10 years of age. And this young man was just minding his own business, trying to get his ice cream. And my dad asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. And the kid looked back and he said, I don't know. I'm 10 years old. I haven't thought about it.
Makes sense.
That makes it very rational. I thought it was a pretty good answer.
Yes.
Kid moves on. My dad turned to me and said, I never want to ever hear you give an answer like that. And I said, why? And he said, because if you don't know what you're aiming for, you can't possibly head in that direction. This gets back to the very fundamental meaning of the word sin. What's a sin? Sin is a bow and arrow term. Right? You pull your bow back and you fire the arrow. If you don't hit the target, that's a sin. Well, if you don't know what target you're aiming for, how can you possibly hit it? So my dad said, I don't care if you change your mind 50 times. Just have a goal. Tell me what you want to do, and then we'll keep talking about it. You're only 7. You can change it, but you got to have that in your mind right now. So I said, I love going to the hospital with you. I'll be a doctor. I never changed my mind. And I'm blessed because there's not a lot of things I could have done. And the field that I've selected, heart surgery, is perfectly designed for my personality. I mean, ideal. I couldn't be a hematologist or pathologist. I needed to be in there in the battle. I needed to have immediate feedback and gratification. If my operation doesn't go well, I can tell right then because the beep, beep becomes beep. All these changes begin to happen. You've spoken about heartbeat and EKGs in your work. Yes. So, the metaphor will come back later in this podcast. But for me, as a heart surgeon, I recognized early on that there were aspects of what I was good at that would make me excel at heart surgery, and there are things that I was bad at that would hurt me and hold me back in other fields. And so, although I told my dad I'd be a doctor at 7, the nuances of it evolved over my life, but it allowed me to begin to head in a direction. And that's an important message for a lot of your listeners. You've done this great job getting people to think bigger, but also think by stepping back from their perception of what life is and what they're destined to become. And if you can have a bigger vision for yourself, then you'll be able to head in that direction. And one of the biggest messages I always have for my own kids and the folks I try to mentor is you don't want me to have a bigger vision for you than you.
Yes.
Right? If my thoughts about how big you can be are greater than your thoughts for who you can be, man, that's not a good match.
Right.
Yeah, you're underserving yourself.
Absolutely. Listening to you now, you have such a high level of self-awareness. Like when you're speaking about why being a doctor was right for you, it's so clear and it's so specific to you. I've heard many people tell me why they want to be doctors, and often you will see patterns or you'll hear broad answers. Whereas when I hear from you, there's so much specificity. Tell me about when was that time after you said it, at 7 years old, at that early age, when was that time where you started to get the awareness to start noticing what was needed to become a doctor, specifically in that field, and then that you had those skills? What was it that revealed that to you?
It wasn't until I was in college. I'd gone to a great school. I'd learned a lot of the fundamentals that I needed to have to succeed in life. And I went to college and I was playing football. And I was beginning to understand what excelling at any adventure would require. And I began to study my own body and realized there were subtleties about my body that I'd never appreciated, that I had taken for granted. By the way, most of you listening out there probably is just where I was, and I'm not perfect either, but I got a little more proficient. And so as I began to appreciate the spectacular wonders of the human body and the fact that I could get my body to do certain things I didn't otherwise expect, I began to appreciate that I could actually do this as a career. I liked telling people things about their body. It gave me joy to look in someone's eyes, have them know that I was there for them, and I could give them insight that could change their basic assumption of the world around them. I'll give you one example right now.
Please.
And just stay away from illness. Right, because I could try to diagnose blood pressure, but it's hard to get the stethoscope this far.
Sure.
Everyone put their hands out in front of them if you're not driving and look at your 3rd digit and your 4th digit, your ring finger versus the middle finger, right? And then look at the index finger. You got those 3 fingers there, right? Okay, which is longer, the index finger or the ring finger?
The ring finger for me.
All right. So people who have a ring finger longer than the index finger had testosterone exposure in utero. They're usually men, but not always. Women will usually have an index finger, the pointer, longer than the ring finger because they weren't exposed to testosterone when they were in utero.
Yes. Yeah.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's something that's been true your entire life, right? It's so obvious in retrospect that you would think you would have already known it, but you didn't. There are literally hundreds of examples like that if you appreciate them, they will be able to help you as guideposts as you get through life. That's just a parlor trick I just gave you. But there's some pretty profound ideas, like are you a super taster or not? That's genetically determined by how well you taste certain foods. People who are super tasters are very sensitive to bitter tastes like broccoli and leafy greens. They don't like vegetables. So it's not because you're a bad person that you don't like vegetables. Literally, your taste buds don't want you to like those vegetables. And kids have more taste buds when they're young. and more of these taste buds, so they don't like vegetables. And there's a survival benefit of that, because in the wilds of 10,000 years ago, if you're wandering around eating bitter things, well, poisonous things are bitter. So you don't want to eat bitter things. So you naturally gravitate to sweet things,
Right.
which is why kids are taught that. And they naturally want it anyway, so it works. But if you don't mature your taste buds, if you infantilize them with fast food and junk food, then they never grow up to become real taste buds. They're no longer going to help you choose the foods naturally that you would want. In the Indian subculture, you're exposed to turmeric so early in life, it becomes part of your natural desire to enjoy food. You put it on making curry food, right? Turns out that turmeric has a remarkable and powerful effect at reducing amyloid plaque in the brain, which might explain why there's less Alzheimer's in India than we would expect. Now, all these things are long ways of me telling you that it's not just luck that you are the way you are. And because you can understand the way you are better than you thought you can hack it to make it easier to do the right thing.
And how do you start that transformation then? So now that you're aware that actually my taste buds are naturally putting me towards these sweet foods, but they may not end up in the best place for me, how do we start molding and transforming our taste buds, for example?
Create an environment that feeds what you're good at and protects you from what you're not good at. Automate your life. I love chocolate. I mean, I really
Me too.
like chocolate.
I'm glad you brought that up.
gosh.
I was going to say, I have a massive sweet tooth for chocolate.
It's just something about I don't like cupcakes, but I like chocolate, real chocolate, not cocoa. That's 70% dark chocolate. And you put that on nuts. I'm a Turk. That's all we eat are nuts. 90% of the hazelnuts in the world are made in Turkey.
Yes.
So you just can't get away from this stuff.
Yeah.
And if I put chocolate covered nuts around me, I will finish the whole bowl. I just don't have the ability to stop. So I just make sure I'm never around chocolate covered nuts in bowls. I'll eat one or two at a time. I don't deprive myself. I'll eat the chocolate by itself, the nuts by themselves, but not together, ever.
Yes.
Now, that's a simple example, but there are many others that you could just think about in your own life. There are a lot of folks who very appropriately medicate with food. Because it turns out carbohydrates, simple carbs especially, are incredibly soothing to the brain. They hit our brain like crack cocaine. So if you are prone to that addictive response, you have to be careful about that. So if you get home from work and you've had a fight with your boss or with your spouse, or the kids weren't respectful and the traffic was bad, and you walk in there and you're a little down, and the first thing you see when you open the fridge is a cheesecake, you're going to grab that cheesecake because you're disciplined and cut a very thin sliver of it. I mean, so thin you can see through it. It's a micron thick. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, microfiche. And you cut that little thing and you put it in your mouth. And it tastes so good. And then you realize you didn't cut the cake straight. So to straighten it out, take another sliver, another bigger sliver, and then it's wedge. And by the time you're done, you finish the whole thing off. Right? Pass that whole thing over here, mama, and you're done. And what you've done unconsciously is feed into your weakness. But if there's no stuff that you're prone to eat in your fridge, you'll eat what you get there. That's why I always tell folks, the crisper is actually a disservice to you. You hide the veggies in the crisper. You don't see them. Instead, you see the soft drink and leftovers and other stuff at eye level. At eye level in your fridge, put foods that you know are good for you, that you also like. In fact, that's the biggest message. Only eat foods that you adore that happen to be good for you. Because you're not going to eat the other stuff anyway.
Absolutely.
And then you'll slowly start to get into a habit. If you're going to drink alcohol, and you know you're going to drink alcohol when you get home, the best alcohol probably is tequila, because it's got a little sweetness to it from the agave anyway. So you don't have to add anything to it. You can drink it straight up, put some lemon in it. So serving is 66 calories in 1 ounce, right? So if I'm going to ever have a drink, that's what I generally will have. So I put it in my freezer at eye level. I open the freezer, I don't see ice cream, which I also like, right? I'll see the agave and I'll drink that, and then I'll have a little bit and then I'm done. And so I haven't undermined myself with something that I know will cause a problem for me in the future. Now, if you're listening, you have your own limitations, your own strengths. Feed the strengths and hinder the limitations, starve them.
I love how practical that is, especially eye level, because we all know at grocery stores and superstores, the stuff at eye level is the stuff that we all want to buy and is necessarily bad for us, but we can change what's at eye level in our homes.
And they're paying to get that.
Yes, exactly.
Which again is good business. I don't blame them.
Oh, 100%.
Just now that you know, address it appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. I know that for a fact, that it's why mini bars in hotels are so dangerous. Because
mini bars are another. I usually take my own food with me.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, I travel with a bag of nuts in my briefcase right now.
Yeah,
I never leave home without it.
Yeah,
I think everyone ought to have nuts in their pockets, male and women, by the way. I soak my nuts. I like to put them in a little water. They germinate. And I cart them around. And that way I'm not foraging through vending machines looking for food. Again, simple little hacks like that end up making your life a little simpler because, They make life simpler, but it's more straightforward. Because what you really want to do is focus your effort, your true chi of the energy decisions that you have to use and consume have to be focused on things that matter. So I don't want to rediscover what breakfast I want every day. I'm going to have Greek yogurt and blueberries most days, or a little oatmeal, or whatever. I mean, there's other things but there are 2 or 3 options. Eggs, that's it. Yeah. I'm not going to go out there wasting all my time in the morning trying to find out what to eat for breakfast. I think the smart thing to do is to save your energy-making prowess.
Absolutely.
For the ideas that you absolutely have to do that are your best interest, but also only you can do.
Absolutely.
And that way, by the time you get to the middle of the afternoon, you haven't exhausted all that energy making worthless decisions. And then you don't fall prey to the afternoon dilemma that many have, the bewitching hour.
Yes.
Because by the time it's 4 or 5 in the afternoon, you're so exhausted, your brain is, that you have to supercharge it with carbs.
Yes.
That's why people crave foods that aren't good for them at 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
That's such a good point. And we all know that decision fatigue is so real when we're wasting our energy on making these smaller, insignificant decisions. I've been having the same thing for breakfast and same thing for lunch for the last 10, 15 years of my life.
So proud of you, Jay.
And it's made my life so much easier. No, it's one of those things that you do because it just gives you sanity and space to use your creative energy. I eat oatmeal every single morning, and I usually have avocado on toast for lunch. That's usually my ideal lunch.
And that's why you look the way you look. And then you can, fool around for dinner and do whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm a bit more experimental at dinner. Usually it's Indian, and I'm very fortunate that my wife's an incredible cook, so I get spoiled every night with something good for me. But no, I love that. And I think so many of us put so much pressure on ourselves to have to be creative about our meals every single day. And I'm sure, what's that doing? Is it also confusing our system? Like if you're always taking different things, I've always had that intuitive sense that I'm actually confusing my own body because I'm just giving it something new every day or every morning.
I think you do confuse your body at times, but even more importantly, your body knows what works for it and what doesn't. And it tells you that in subtle ways, and then more loudly says it, and then shouts in your ear as you get ill from not paying attention. So most of us will naturally gravitate towards the kinds of foods that are in our best interest. So if you eat oatmeal every morning, there's a pretty good chance that you don't have a problem with oatmeal because you wouldn't do it anymore. Now, there's some folks listening who haven't paid attention, so you're exempted from this comment.
Okay.
So please pay attention. But if you get up in the morning and you're bloated, your eyes are swollen shut, you feel like you've got a cough, you're having a food allergy oftentimes, or an allergy to something. So listen to your body. But assuming you get up and you feel rested and you're energized, then what you did the day before worked for you. You'll naturally want to reproduce that. And I know that I have sensitive intestinal systems around certain things. Like I can't eat super spicy food.
Me too.
Yeah, my wife loves it. She's also a chef. That was one of our, that was one of the New York Times bestselling books was her book on food. I forgot that one. Wow. And she likes spicy foods. And I see her mouth burning up. And I know when I eat really spicy foods, my bottom hurts when I go to the bathroom. I mean, the entire intestinal system is ravaged. So I've learned not to do that. It's not fun the first time or any time it happens.
Yeah, listen to our bodies. Everyone who's listening and watching right now, there are so many incredible insights in this podcast already. I hope you're taking notes. And if you're driving and you can't take notes, and if you're walking your dog and you can't take notes, then please make sure you come back to this episode. There are so many great nuggets that Dr. Oz is already sharing with us. Thank you so much for making it so practical and applicable for my audience. You made a point a few moments ago where you were talking about how when you're talking about people with their visions and their goals, you're always wanting them to expand them further. You were saying that if I'm speaking to someone and my goal for them is bigger than theirs, then they need to work on that. How have you seen that? Like, obviously, you spent a lot of time between Turkey and the US when you were growing up. How were you able to expand your vision, and how can people who are listening today also do that? Because I don't know about yourself, and I'd love to know, when I started, I never knew how big things could scale. And I'm not sure when you started as a doctor, whether you believed you'd have this incredible TV show and selling over 40 million books. Like, did you have that vision, or was that something that gradually grew as time went on?
None of the things you say were on my vision board ever.
Yeah, exactly. And
I didn't do any things that I did for that vision.
Yes.
I had much more measured desires, but they were desires that would address the deep urging, longing inside me. That I felt that while I was on this planet, having this experience, if I hadn't done these things, shame on me. So I began pursuing a lot of things I do with that measured goal. And my wife, who's actually had a much better pulse on what I should be doing and on what America's feeling and needs than I've ever had, was the one who kept nudging me. And she was the one who conspired with Oprah, actually. Right. Because they said, my wife I'm practicing heart surgery, minding my own business. You're in New York City. I'm at New York Presbyterian. So sometimes the news agencies will call and say, hey, breaking story, someone's having heart surgery. What do you have to comment? Or maybe you did the heart surgery, because I had done operating on a bunch of famous people. So I ended up becoming part of the news, but it was, around the edges. I didn't do the heart surgery to be in the paper.
News, of course.
So my wife one day said, you're coming home every day and you're moaning about the fact that people are having heart surgery who didn't need it. If they just taken a few proactive steps on their own, they could have avoided the whole thing.
Yes.
Instead of complaining about it, let's fix the problem. Let's make a show that it teaches people what you guys know. And this is the accusation she launched at me, and she was right. She says, the reason America doesn't have the message about health is because you haven't given it to them. So with that in mind, I started working with her. We crafted a show that aired on Discovery Channel. My first guest was Oprah. And Lisa and Oprah bonded, and they began talking about things that we could do in a bigger way. And of course, Oprah had the biggest platform of all. And she loves to teach. People don't always give her the credit she deserves there, but that's primarily what she wanted to do.
Yes.
Whether it's race relations or transgender issues, LGBT issues, or if it's spirituality or health. In fact, the word doctor means doctora, right? Teacher. The word itself means teacher. So I would go on her show, 60, 70 times we'd work stuff together. And Lisa and Oprah began planning out ways we could do it differently and brand it better and get America to believe they could do it. Because our biggest enemy, your biggest enemy, Jay, is nihilism. People don't think they can do it. And we're both here to say, yes, you can.
Yes.
Absolutely. Only you are holding yourself back. And what you want to achieve, that's your decision. But you can do it. So I began talking more and more publicly about the possibilities of health. And that led me into a place where I could talk to folks in the public airways. In fact, I started on radio because I would host Oprah's radio show. When I do her show, and then I go off and do the radio studio and do that. And that actually taught me a lot about how to talk to people about stuff that matters. And I recognized at that point, and actually I remember the moment that it happened. I was with Oprah and she said, has it happened yet? And I said, what? I said, do people know? And I said, know what? I said, do they see you on the street and know who you are and know what you're doing? And it had just started. Because most of us are comfortable with anonymity, right? You're walking down the street. No one knows what you're doing. Thankfully, we behave ourselves, but you don't have to.
Yes, yeah.
But at a certain point, people begin knowing who you are. And they think they went to school with you. They can't quite place you. And eventually it becomes a bit more powerful of a link to what you do for a living. And she said, when you have that, use it for good. It's not about self-aggrandizement. It's really about using that power of the platform, the bully pulpit, the megaphone that you have, and telling a story, sharing wisdom, which is what you're doing, that allows people to find themselves in their own life story. Because listen, we all are in a story.
Yes.
And if you don't know what story you're in, that's a problem. You don't want to be in someone else's story, because if you're in someone else's story, you're a bit player, because they're not going to make you the star of their story, right? So don't be your spouse's story person. You're just a co-star there, right? And if you're not sure what your story's about, well, you might be headed in the wrong direction. So figure out what your story is, small or big as it is, and then show up in that story, because you're the star of it, because only you can be the star of it. And that was part of the message we started to go out with on the show. And I tell you, what resonated the most was people's interest in their health. I mean, it's selfish in a way because you want to be healthy and it's in your best interest. But at its very core, if you can't take charge of your own health, if you cannot control what's going on inside your body, how can you change the world outside of it?
Absolutely.
And the reason you should care about your body is because it's the first step of everything else that you have to do. If you're struggling with diabetes and high blood pressure and your cholesterol's wacky and you're depressed because you've got continuous inflammatory problems, you can't remember anything because you're heading towards dementia because everything else in your body is in disarray, well, how are you going to contribute to the planet? Right? Your parents did not give you the body you were blessed to have, your most vital inheritance, so you can muck it up. So now that you realize how sacred you are, if you truly appreciate that, manage it so you can do all the other things. And the challenge I always give to my audience is think about someone you really adore and really love. Just absolutely are spectacularly faithful about. If they were putting in their body what you're putting in your body, what would you tell them? Because whatever that is, tell that to yourself.
That is great advice. I love that. Tell that to yourself. When we treat people we love or are fond of or affectionate towards with so much more care and attention that we do ourselves. And you reminded me of, this was one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's first ever documentaries. It was called Pumping Iron.
I've seen it. I know the guy who produced it, Butler.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Okay. I've only ever seen it when I was growing up,
Oh,
but I remember
gosh.
there's one line in there that stuck with me. And in that he said, the reason why fitness goals were so important to him and his health and his physique was so important to him is because he believed that was something you could never cheat, right? You could never cheat your own body.
Yeah.
If you're eating badly, you're going to see the result. You can't cheat it. Like you can cheat, you can lie to yourself in your mind, but your body's not going to lie
What
to
a
you.
beautiful insight from a very big man.
Absolutely,
It's nice.
absolutely. And he said it in that, I think it was like 1970 or something. It must have even way before I was born, but I remember watching that. But it was fascinating. Tell me about this belief principle, and I'd love to hear from your perspective because we hear about it so much, but I'd love to hear it from your medical background. And this is us diving into purpose a bit more now as well. But where have you had a failed belief that you've had to rewire and then seen the benefits of having new belief systems in your own life? Where have you seen that in a big way? A failed belief that you had to transform or upgrade?
A good example, I think, in my life has been my interaction with patients. So I've got a couple strikes. I'm a doctor. So sometimes, I think I know everything. I'm a surgeon, which is basically controlled arrogance. Right? Because you don't want to have a tepid surgeon in there dilly-dallying around. You got to take a knife and cut somebody. You have to have unbelievable confidence that's the right thing to do. And I'm a guy, which is a third strike. Okay, because we mansplain for a reason, right? Because we think we got it all worked out. Don't ask directions, all that stuff. So you send a male doctor, surgeon into a room and talk to a patient. We're going to tell you the answer, and then expect that you got it and move on. Because I know now that you heard me tell you the answer, you'll act accordingly.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen. Doesn't happen in the hospital. Doesn't happen in real life. Doesn't happen with schools and relationships or anything else that we really care about. People do not change based on what they know. They change based on what they feel.
So true.
And you can't fix a feeling until you hear it. So the failed belief on my part was I could cut corners, be fast about it, tell my kids the answer, bark something to my wife, tell the patient what to do, stop smoking. Well, please. If it was that easy, they would have done it. They know it's not good for them. They don't need to tell them it's bad for them. Quite the opposite. They feel guilty when you remind them that they're incompetent and couldn't stop smoking. And then to deal with their failing and the self-flagellation, they go out and smoke to relax. So if you're really going to get people to change, and this gets back into the fundamental psychology of change, which is, it's not the psychology of Freud, which is about how messed up you are because of your parents. It's not about the beautiful, wonderful work that's been done in the mid part of the last century that helped establish the fundamentals of why we think the way we think and why archetypes are so important to us and why faith is ultimately so essential to our well-being. Faith in anything, ourselves, something bigger than us, and all the things that go along with that. But the psychology of change is about the very seemingly pedestrian issue of how you get people to do something different than they were going to do. But it drives all politics. It drives a lot of decisions that are being made today. All marketing is based on this. But it is also the main reason we have conflict in our relationships, because men marry the woman exactly what they want, just the way they want her. And then she wants to change. And women marry the man they think he can become, and he won't change. Right?
Yes.
And then women are, from the moment you're married, you're moving apart from each other.
Yeah.
And you've got to find ways of reconnecting. After the chemical handcuffs come off, which is about 7 years, that's about enough time to bear a couple of children and get them to an age where they could actually chip in a little bit and not run off the cliff, right? But at 7 years, the chemical handcuffs fall off, the oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, they go away. And now you actually are left with who you really are. And if you can't figure it out because you don't understand the emotions drive it, it seems self-evident, but think about how you communicate with each other.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to tell someone to stop smoking, I don't tell them they're stupid for smoking. I tell them, do you care for yourself as much as the people in this room who brought you here care for you? And if you really loved yourself, you would stop. But even more importantly, if you love the people who are around you, you'll stop so you'll be there for them. Who's going to walk your daughter down the aisle? Who's going to keep your wife company when she gets frail because she's going to need you? So if now with that mindset, here are a couple tactics that might work. We'll still give you the tools.
Yeah, sure.
But you'll use them now with a bit of passion. And that is the fundamental way we get people to adjust their lives. And when we try to ignore that, that's why politics is so fascinating, because people emotionally already know the answer, their answer. May not be your answer, but it's their answer. Then the facts are just there to defend it. That's why people have the exact same set of facts and have opposite answers, because you can manipulate facts. It's a classic line. There's statisticians, damn statisticians, and liars, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I said it wrong. I'm sorry, I got it wrong. It's liars, I completely mucked
That's
that
fine.
up.
Say it again.
It's
Yeah.
liars, damn.
We'll re-edit it.
I don't have to edit it. Give it. We all make mistakes. It's liars, damn liars, and statisticians.
Right.
And because the statisticians are ultimately, not that they want to do it, but they can manipulate anything to say anything. And if you don't deal with the underlying emotions of why you feel a certain way about abortion or gun control or inequality or immigration, then you're not, the facts are, who cares? You can change minds with facts sometimes, but it's uncommon.
Absolutely. How have you seen purpose linked to health choices in people's lives?
It's the best way for you to identify that part of your purpose is to better the planet, to bring light to us. This is a rabbinical concept in Judaism. We speak to this, that your goal is to bring light. And you have to challenge yourself. Are you bringing light to the world or not? And we can get petty. All of us can. We can make mistakes. But if what you're fundamentally trying to do is to lift the burden, then you're doing good. And one of the best ways you can do that is through your own body. Because you either are an albatross on the neck of the people who love you, or you're leading the path forward. And the big insight that people don't want to acknowledge, but I'll share it with you right now, is people who hang with healthy people get healthy. People who hang with unhealthy people get sick. That's why when couples marry, the wife will generally lose some health because she takes better care of herself in general than he does. And his bad habits will rub off on her.
Right.
We want to flip that. Move it the other way.
Yeah.
Because once you figure out those basic simple steps, which are much more tangible and visible, we can all get up and walk half an hour in the morning. And if you didn't walk, you didn't do it. Then from there, your meditation. Well, how good's your meditation? Well, you can beat yourself about it. Trying, of course, is the most important thing. But walking the 10,000 steps is easier to measure, quantify, and check the box on. Then did you get to a place in meditation that you were aiming for? And then did that translate to living a life of awareness and fulfillment? Well, that's hard. Right? People spend their whole lives and don't get there, which, maybe you're never supposed to get there. Then and on until you finally get to a place where, and I've seen this especially in older patients, where you did what you wanted to do. There's a serenity, a peacefulness. And I see that especially in people who say, I've done enough. I don't need to have my life saved anymore. Dr. Oz, I know you can operate on my heart and make my valve better, but it's not about that.
Yeah.
People that I loved. Many are gone. The things I needed to do, I got past. I'm ready for the next chapter. And I pray that I'll one day be able to get there. Yeah. For most of us thinking through this podcast right now, we're not there. But we better take the steps so that we'll one day be that. Otherwise, what's it about?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so Dr. Oz, honestly, I could talk to you for hours. Like, you're fascinating. Like, this is... We've only got the final 5 left now, which is our quick fire, rapid fire round that we end every episode with. But genuinely, I hope we can do this again.
I look forward to it. I'm going to have you on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to develop this friendship too, because you're fascinating to talk to. I could literally sit and listen to you for hours. So these are the final 5. The first question I want to ask you is, your father actually set you up with your wife. Tell us a bit about that.
The best thing I ever did was marrying my wife.
Okay.
And I remember meeting her at a restaurant because my father is meeting her father for dinner. They're both heart doctors, surgeons. And she walked in the restaurant. I was in love with her immediately. She thought I was the maitre d'. And I didn't want my father to have any satisfaction from thinking he may have introduced me to my wife. This is a classic. This core you should have, I think, if you're in a healthy father-son relationship. And so I dated her secretly for a while until one day he was giving me a hard time and saying, you're always working, you're not focusing on things that really matter. I introduced you to that wonderful woman, you didn't even talk to her. And I finally acknowledged him. Not only was I talking to her, we were dating and I was going to marry her. And I did within a year.
I love that. Great. Question number 2. You've been married for over 30 years.
34 years.
34 years, which is incredible. Tell us one of the biggest lessons that has helped you create such a long-term relationship, also successful. It seems like you're so happy.
Well, my father-in-law told me that I should give it on the small things because when the big decisions had to be made, I'd be giving it on them as well. So I should know what it feels like. But the bigger message, I didn't respect the yin yang of marriage. I didn't need Lisa to be good at what I was good at. I needed her to be good at what I was bad at.
Yes.
Lisa's very thoughtful about deeper spiritual issues.
Wonderful.
She went to theology school at Columbia. She, if you look at her bedstand, it's deep, the deepest of the deep.
Wow.
And that's pleasure reading. I mean, she's devouring young just as a, afternoon on a Sunday just to remind herself about some of the basic premises. And I'm trying to catch up on playing football with my son. Or I'm very tactical.
Yes.
And I needed her to tell me what to aim at, back to our initial comment about sin. And until I really respected, that's what I needed, to fill the color in the lines of who I am. And it also puts some responsibility to me to color in her lines.
Absolutely.
Then if we do that together, then we're both satisfied. And so and because of that, I now actively seek out people who are different from me, because I don't need to get better at what, and with people who are good at what I'm doing. I need to get better at things I'm really bad at.
Absolutely. Love that. Question number 3, what is the most used app on your phone?
Most used app, I mean, it's the messaging apps.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I'm always talking to folks, and I find it incredibly valuable to ping people that I miss.
Yeah.
And I don't ping them just to say, hey, you owe me something. I ping them to remind them that there's stuff that's important that we got to focus on in life. My kids say I'm too clingy.
Yeah.
But I feel an obligation.
I love that. Number 4, walk us through your morning routine.
I get up every morning around 6. I'll do yoga for about 7 minutes. I say 7 minutes on purpose because I know I always have 7 minutes. I'm not going to admit to myself I'm so disorganized I don't have 7 minutes. You won't either, Jay, nor anyone listening. So 7 minutes we can always start, and by the time you start, you're almost done. I do a sun salutation with some calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups. If I have more time, I'll work out for an hour. I'll go down to the gym, and we have a gym where we live, and I'll manage it. If not, then I'll get off to work. Then I don't eat any breakfast. Don't have any coffee. I have a little lemon juice and water. It's an old Ayurvedic treatment, by the way. Get your gastric fluid, your juices flowing. Around 8 o'clock, 8:30, it's a couple hours later, I'll feel a little hungry. I'll have yogurt and blueberries. I don't have any coffee or any caffeine until later in the day. And I'll challenge everyone who can hear my voice to do the same. You don't need caffeine when you first wake up. The alarm just woke you up. The toothpaste could have helped, and the shower for sure will get you up.
Yes.
That's just a cultural issue. And if you can't go for 2 hours without coffee, you're addicted. So audit that in yourself. Around 9, 10 in the morning, have a cup of coffee. I'm not against caffeine, but recognize that it's not actually giving you energy. It's withdrawing your energy from your energy banks. So you make it a cultural issue. Make it a pleasurable item.
Yes.
Not make it something you have to have first thing in the morning. And then from then on, I'm automated. I make the shows. I nap every day. It's the only
Oh, wow. Okay.
Let me just share that with the audience. It is the most valuable thing I've done in my life. I used to nap even at the hospital when I had a chance. But you can go, Leonardo da Vinci never slept through an evening, but he would nap every day a couple times. So a nap is much more effective than caffeine or carbohydrates or any of the other things you may try in the afternoon. 8 hours after you awaken, so for us, it's about 2 in the afternoon, take a 5-10 minute nap. It'll change your life.
Wow, I love that. And 5th and final question, if you could set the world an experiment they had to do for 30 days, just one thing that they had to do for 30 days in a row, what would it be?
Sleep better. And it's much harder than you think. Work at it. It's worth the investment. Your creativity will be dramatically increased. And here's the best part. You'll work hard because you probably do anyway. You'll work smart. And everything will turn out better because you'll be able to connect the dots more impactfully than anybody else. And sleep is something you do by yourself. Only you can do it. But don't shortchange yourself.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Oz. That was awesome. I'm sure you all agree that we could listen to more and more of that. So we're hoping that Dr. Oz will come back onto the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. There were so many great insights today. Make sure you grab them, share them on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you like. You know that I'm always sharing the ones that stand out to me. Like I said, go back through this episode and just pick one thing that you can start applying from tomorrow. Just one thing, whether it's changing the height of something in your refrigerator, whether it's trying to get better sleep, whatever Dr. Oz may have said that resonated with you. Just pick one thing, test it for the next week. I can't wait for you to listen to the next episode. Dr. Oz, thank you so much again. So grateful to you.
Honored.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.